Good evening and welcome. I am Amarachi Ubani. Tonight, President Muhammadu Buhari retains Ministry of Petroleum as he assigns portfolios to new ministers, former ministers of Information, Transport, Aviation and Justice, among others, also retain their offices. Presidential Election Tribunal reserves judgment to a later date in the petition by the People's Democratic Party and its presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar against the victory of President Buhari. As Nigerians look up to President Buhari to resolve cases of banditry and kidnapping across the country, our report on security tonight captures the challenges before the government. And President Donald Trump cancels planned trip to Denmark and lashes out at the Danish leader after she turned down his offer to buy Greenland.
On business news tonight, economics professor asks newly appointed ministers to focus on policies that synchronize with central bank's monetary policy mandates.
And on sports news tonight, newly appointed Minister of Youth and Sports Development, Sunday Dare, vows to address numerous challenges and controversies in the ministry.
And from Abuja, World Health Organization warns against complacency as Nigeria once again moves closer towards polio-free certification after 3 years of interruption.
The much-awaited federal cabinet has finally been inaugurated, comprising 43 ministers and other cabinet members. The cabinet members and the secretary to the government of the federation took the oath of office in the council chambers, signaling the formal takeover of the Federal Executive Council that will assist the president achieve his set plans in his second term. There were, however, a few twists as the ministerial list had a show of retention, unbundling and a new kid on the block. Apart from President Muhammadu Buhari, who retains his position as the Minister of Petroleum Resources, 12 other ministers also retained their previous ministries. They include Mr. Rotimi Amechi of the Ministry of Transport and Abubakar Malami, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice. The Ministry of Power, Works and Housing has now been unbundled, with the Works and Housing Ministry now being superintended by Mr. Babatunde Fashola, while Mrs. Saleh Maman is now the Minister of Power. The new kid on the block is Sadia Umar Farouk, who heads the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development.
I will faithful and bear true allegiance to the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The inauguration of ministers designate begins with their introduction and citations. Some citations evoke various reactions from the audience.
Born June 12, 1970. Alagilai Mohammed.
Among the appointees is the one from Ondo State, Senator Motayo Alashadura, whose rag to riches story was quite inspiring.
Senator Alashadura started work in 1974 as a messenger at Balogun and Yonfalu, Badejo and Co. Chartered Accountants, and rose through the ranks to become the managing partner and chief executive officer of the same firm. All within 16 years. Rose from a messenger to chief executive officer within 16 years.
Immediate past ministers Rotimi Amechi, Jeffrey Onyema and Chris Ngige are notable personalities who are retaining their former post. In the case of Babatunde Fashola, who used to oversee 3 ministries, the Ministry of Power has been unbundled from him, as is now to oversee the Ministry of Works and Housing. The first person to be sworn in is the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, who returns for a second time as SGF. Among the 43 ministers, 7 of them are women. While reeling out the ministers' portfolios, President Muhammadu Buhari announced a new ministry.
Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, disaster management and social development.
The president charges them to be dedicated, honest, and unbiased in the discharge of their duties.
For the past 2 days, you were with me at the retreat. The retreat, which was conducted with clear focus on the roadmap towards the delivery of government policies, programs, and projects for 2019 to 2023. We must also intensify efforts to reduce internal security threats and eliminate corruption at all levels so as to ensure that our citizens have a safe and corruption-free environment where they can live and conduct their businesses without fear and intimidation.
From here, the ministers return to their new offices and familiarize themselves with their ministries. Most importantly, they will set out to work on the budget, which is expected to be ready when members of the National Assembly return from their recess.
Shortly after the inauguration, some of the ministers immediately swung into action by moving straight to their offices, where they met with members of staff in their respective ministries. Some of them had discussions on the work ahead and the need for teamwork to meet the next level agenda. Kayla Megwa reports.
Jeffrey Onyema.
43 ministers have been sworn into office and handed their portfolios. These will make up the cabinet of President Muhammadu Buhari, which he promises will move the country to the next level. And that work starts now. With the creation of the Ministry of Police Affairs, the workers celebrate as the newly appointed minister, Megari Dingyadi, arrives the ministry. The returning Minister of Aviation also got a resounding welcome as he made his way into the ministry. He promises to correct any wrongs in the running of the ministry's affairs.
Not for me alone, it is for all of us.
Please can we remain seated? The new Minister of Mines and Steel Development, Olamilekan Adegbite, in the company of the Minister of State, Uchechukwu Oga, addressed the staff of the ministry on his expectations.
If you're such that what you are doing, you want to quickly hurry up and nobody catches you there, then that's also corruption.
At the Ministry of Budget and National Planning, the new Minister of State, Mr. Clement Agba, takes up the full affairs of the former minister, Mr. Udo Udoma. As the supervising minister, Zainab Ahmed, is also the Minister of Finance.
There's a whole lot of work to be done, and he needs the budget to be before the National Assembly in September.
We will manage as a ministry.
The returning Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Geoffrey Onyema, promises to be more aggressive in protecting Nigerians in diaspora.
I would like to see us have a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 24/7 help desk. So every Nigerian anywhere in the world will have a number that they can call whenever they are having any issues of any kind.
One of the first things we have to do.
Mr. Babatunde Fashola now heads the Ministry of Works and Housing. He too says presenting a budget to the National Assembly in the next few weeks is the first job for the ministry. Meanwhile, the newly appointed Minister of Interior, Mr. Rauf Aregbesola, says his focus will be security.
If you want to define the security that we are talking about, it's less of external, which is defense, and more of internal. So, if that will therefore condition our mobilization for the next level assignment.
As the ministers take up their portfolios today, it is the hope of every Nigerian that these ministers, who will be manning these government agencies that impact directly on the lives of Nigerians, will carry out optimal, selfless, human rights-centered, patriotic service. Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the main opposition, the People's Democratic Party, has described the ministerial inauguration as a poor parade of recycled foot travelers, many of whom, according to the party, have failed Nigerians in governance assignments. In a statement released today, the party faulted the list, alleging that it was made up of persons indicted for corruption and looting the treasury. The party says it feels the pains and anguish of Nigerians who by now would have been enjoying the benefits of the much-desired economic recovery blueprint articulated by its candidate, Atiku Abubakar. The statement adds that proactive strategic policies and plans were laid out for rapid interventions in critical sectors to address the security, economic and social problems in the country. More reactions to the swearing-in, this time from an economist and policy analyst, Tilewa Adebajo, who believes the president's cabinet is heavily political. He says, notwithstanding, he would want the cabinet to focus on the economy and work effectively to rejig the government's economic recovery growth plan.
This is a heavily political cabinet with ex-governors and ex-senators dominating the fray. I think what is more important now is for the government to put together a clearly defined policy that will stimulate growth in the Nigerian economy. As you know, with the way the economy is growing, if we're not very careful, as the central bank has said, we will be heading for a recession. The key economic indicators are not very positive. Right now, we're about over $70 billion in debt, and we're using 65% of our revenues to service debt. Clearly, this is not sustainable. So I think it's important that the government take a look at its economic recovery growth plan, which is the plan that they've sold to Nigerians over the last 4 years, and they need to go back to the drawing board on that plan, and they need to revamp that plan, and they need to tell us exactly how they're going to grow the economy. So now that this is done, what we need is a plan that can grow the economy, because the former plan they gave us claimed that the economy will grow 5% this year and 7% next year. Clearly, that is not happening. The economy is not even growing at 2%. So we really have a major problem, and I think it's time to come up with a cohesive plan. For me, the key ministries that need to work in synchronization are the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning with budget, and also the central bank. These three ministries are key to restoring confidence and to restoring growth in the Nigerian economy. I think you should also know that the Nigerian Stock Exchange is at a 10-year low, and business confidence is very low at the moment. So it is important that we need to get out a policy that can generate interest from the business community, that can improve the levels of confidence, and more importantly, create growth and begin to cut down the rate of unemployment, which currently stands about 35%. So it is a tall order, and there's need for serious action because the central bank has warned that if action is not taken quickly, the economy could slip into a recession.
Staying with those reactions, for the former Director General of the Bureau of Public Service Reforms, Dr. Joe Abba, his concern is about the cost implications of creating more parastatals, agencies of government, and the size of the country's civil service workforce. He explains that in recent times, every single bill passed comes with the creation of additional agencies. Noted that the federal government needs to look into the creation of agencies of government in order to reduce the cost of governance.
The ministries have been expanded, and that's likely to increase the cost of governance in terms of running ministries, because you then have to pay and staff more ministers. But the civil service itself hasn't expanded. So it's just the same 82,000 or so core civil servants now spread into more ministries. But the real cost actually is in the creation of agencies and parastatals, because this is what, in my view, actually leads to the ballooning of the cost of governance. So almost every day, we're creating a new agency or parastatal. Every single law that we pass includes the creation of a new agency or parastatal. That actually is where I think the bulk of the cost is.
In part two, after the break, we have more on today's inauguration of ministers by the president and the challenges before the new federal cabinet. Stay with us.